Yo gamers, my name is Flaws. Welcome back to yet another React video. I keep saying another React video as if I am doing it a lot, but that is not the case. I received a lot of love on my Hollow Knight series lately, which is really nice, and I am very thankful. I read all the comments, even the bad ones. There's like 98% positive ones, and then there's like 2% bad ones. That doesn't matter. I am really thankful for all the love you've given the series, because I did put a lot of love into it, and I am, it's just made me smile a lot, okay? So, keep doing whatever you guys are doing, because it's good. It's good, I like it. And I was also recommended to watch Mossbag, the mostly complete lore of Hollow Knight. And, since I don't really understand the lore or know about the lore, it's a good time. It's a good time to watch it. However, I will probably be doing this in parts, because 1 hour and 17 minutes is really long, but I will pause it. It's not like I am gonna go watch through the whole video and just, pause at a random ass moment during my editing. No. I will stop and then I'll continue later, okay? And also, like, if I receive at least 1 like, I'll release the second one. Not immediately after, because I need to do my Melania video, which should supposedly be Saturday? Yeah, Saturday, I think. Let's just get straight into it. And if you guys are unaware, Mossbag is really cool. I feel like I watched one of his videos before, but I'm not sure. Or at least I tried to. Okay, yep. Let's fucking go. Warning, this video contains a few spoilers for Hollow Knight. Please bear that in mind before embarking on this journey. Or don't. I really don't care. I'm just text on the screen. Hopefully it won't spoil me about P5. I am doing well on P5, by the way. The last time I did some attempts, I did like 2 hours of attempts. That was 3 attempts. So I'm getting pretty good. I am getting pretty good. So it shouldn't take way too long. But yeah, already paused the video, imagine. Okay. Do I skip? Okay, never mind.
If you were to ask me, what is your favorite video game ever made? I would have to say Cory in the House for the Nintendo DS.
Based.
But Hollow Knight would be a close second. Hollow Knight was released on February 24th.
I think my favorite game of all time is actually World of Warcraft. It has just been with me for so many years by now. But I really love Hollow Knight. I really love it, and I am so excited for Silksong. Imagine watching this video and not subscribing, because the best Silksong experience will be experienced here. Well, I mean, your own may be better, but okay, I am close second to yours. Continue.
2017 by Team Cherry, an indie game studio based in the mythical land of Adelaide, South Australia. Over the past 3 years, Hollow Knight has become an indie darling. The game has sold over 3.5 million copies. It was the opening game at ADGQ 2019.
It deserves so much more!
There's a Hollow Knight book, a line of plushies.
Yo, I need that. I need that.
Nicotine patches, nuclear warheads, and even vinyl records for all you goddamn
I need all of that!
Hipsters. Team Cherry had one goal when making Hollow Knight. They wanted to create a world that allowed players to get completely lost in exploration. We can see this desire in Hollow Knight's design. The levels in Hollow Knight are massive, with secrets and rewards hidden in every nook and cranny, be that powerful charms, special abilities, or the game's navigation system requires the player to work for their map, forcing them to make a stronger mental image of the world in their head. Christopher Larkin's score and Ari Gibson's artwork lend to this as well, creating an atmosphere that the...
What is your guys' favorite theme, OST, from Hollow Knight? My personal favorite is either Sealed Vessel or Nightmare King Grim. I really like those. But they are both kind of like, opposites in terms of the music, in terms of the beat and all that. Whereas Grim is really hype and Sealed Vessel is so very sad.
Player won't want to leave.
But yeah, let me know in the comments, right?
But there's one aspect of Hollow Knight that keeps people like me coming back. The world building. When Super Metroid launched in 1994, it stood out for its amazing sense of immersion.
I've never
Now,
played
in
that.
1994, I was busy not being alive, but I've watched enough YouTube video essays to know that this game was a big deal. In case you didn't know, Super Metroid is basically the granddaddy of all Metroidvanias. That's why they're called Metroidvanias. Now in Super Metroid, there are moments that give the player a sense of depth. Basically the feeling that this world exists outside of Samus's interactions with it. In the room right before that diabetic crocodile thing, Samus can find the corpse of a random soldier. His inclusion here doesn't change the gameplay at all, but instead gives the player a sense of wonder about the world they are exploring. Who was this guy? Why was he here in the first place?
Yeah.
Did he like jazz? Now,
Maybe.
finding dead bodies and other random garbage is pretty cool, right? Well, Hollow Knight basically does the same thing, about a dozen times.
Yep.
Through its world building, Hollow Knight turns Hallownest into a living kingdom. You can sense the ancient history of the land when you look at dilapidated structures or giant barred doors. Nothing feels like it was put into the game randomly. There's a reason for it all. Except those reasons aren't the easiest to uncover.
What the fuck? This is a place? I thought I've been thorough, but I've never seen this.
Hollow Knight's narrative is buried under layers of NPC dialogue, item descriptions, lore tablets, and even additional content like the Quarrel comic.
Why wasn't Bretta there? Why isn't Bretta there? Isn't that normal? This guy never saved Bretta. No!
Item descriptions, lore tablets, and even additional content like the Quarrel comic and Fangamer's Wanderer's Journal. These past 3 years have seen an insane amount of research by the Hollow Knight community to make sense of Team Cherry's sprawling world. We've even made it to the point where people are looking at the in-game signs to try and decipher Hallownest's logographic language. In this video, I hope to give you a long and detailed look into the world of Hollow Knight, exploring Hallownest's history and uncertain future. When I'm not busy making surprisingly accurate Super Smash Bros. Roster speculation videos.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Do you guys see that? He fucking dislikes his own videos. Look, also on the next one.
Roster speculation videos or insightful podcasts.
Look at that shit.
About beloved subjects like the Donkey Kong Country television series or whatever this was supposed to be.
He also does it. Oh my god, this guy.
Usually making videos about Hollow Knight. And while I am a seasoned Hollow Knight lore expert, I cannot confirm that every musing or theory presented in this video is completely correct. I
Jack
highly recommend
Dollboy?
checking out the lore section of the Hollow Knight wiki if you want a more neutral explanation of Hollow Knight's lore. But if you're too lazy to read, then I suggest you sit back, order some Domino's pizza,
no, I can't do that.
Grab a block of cheese from the fridge, and enjoy the mostly complete lore of Hollow Knight.
What a name. What a name.
It's a simple fact of life that every human worships a god, be that technology, ideologies, or in rare cases, God. As it turns out,
Kratos.
bugs in Hallownest pretty much operate in the same way. From the Mosskin born from the dream of a giant slug, to the emo kids of the ancient civilization who literally worship the darkness, there is no shortage of things to worship in the world of Hollow Knight. Our story begins with a creature very much worthy of worship. A creature born from the carcass of a worm. The carcass can still be found in the Kingdom's Edge, and it's our only good...
You know, this is actually kind of funny, because when I found this place and I was running out, I actually got hit on the way out, and apparently you're not supposed to get hit. Yeah, that happened. You guys have to check out the series in order to notice when that happens, so... I'm not gonna edit it in! I could, but I'm not!
Look at what worms actually looked like. At the time Hollow Knight occurs, it is suggested there are no worms left in the world. They were incredibly long creatures that featured little to no limbs. Another more mysterious property of worms was that they had some kind of prescience or foresight. Basically, they could see the future to some capacity. It isn't clear how effective this ability was. Considering how the entire race went extinct, this foresight ability must have been pretty shit. Getting back to this particular worm carcass, it is
just a
explained that
smidgen.
This worm traveled across the distant mountains and wastelands beyond Hallownest. Once it arrived in Hallownest, the worm died. Except not really. Inside the maw of the carcass sits a pale broken egg, out of which hatched a new form of worm, a being of meager shell. This form of the worm
Pale
is usually
King.
referred to as the Pale King, and he's the character basically responsible for everything that happens in Hollow Knight. The Pale King is a higher being.
He's not the reason why Marissa died to my dream nail, is he? Maybe he is. It's not my fault, guys.
A type of creature that exists above all others. His body was said to shine with a radiant visage that harmed those who looked upon him.
Okay.
The ultimate goal of the Pale King seemed to be in line with that of other worms. A line from the cryptic Mr. Mushroom reads, "Worms pull bugs into their thrall, till ages pass and kingdoms fall." In other words, it's just in their nature. Dogs wag their tails, cats bury their shit, and worms bring massive amounts of bugs into their service in order to form long-standing kingdoms and civilizations.
That's...
And here in a far
Yeah!
corner of the world, the Pale King emerged from the corpse of his former self and began to build his eternal kingdom, Hallownest. There's this one slight problem. There's like people already living there. The area that would eventually become Hallownest was already filled with mantises, bees, moths, spiders, mushrooms, and bush cosplay.
Oh. Yeah, the only reason why I paused here, like, what is your guys' favorite race? Like, the cutest race is probably the bees. Like, they're really cute, but, you know, the hive is something else. But these guys, they're also really nice. But the mantis are really just goated, aren't they? You know, the way you beat the mantis lords, and you, they just start bowing to you. That is so fucking badass. I fucking love that. Wait, I just noticed it's Spoderman. Oh, cool. So yeah, feel free to let me know which race you guys like the most. But the bees are really fucking cute. The fungal guys are also really cute. There are so many cute things in this game. Like, everything is almost French. French? Friend shaped. Okay. Sorry for pausing.
Each of these groups were already operating with their own cultures and societies, and each group had a different interaction with the Pale King. One of the more receptive groups to the arrival of the Pale King were the mushrooms of the fungal wastes.
Okay.
These creatures were able to communicate with one another through one shared mind. The mushrooms viewed this shared mind as a strength, and they were kind of smug dickheads.
These are so funny.
Ultimately, the mushrooms wearily accepted the Pale King's rule.
Did I see this? Can anyone enlighten me if I saw this? I've forgotten about this if I have. I feel like I have. Maybe I haven't.
Viewing his foresight as a shield to the dangers of the future. Another group living in the fungal wastes is the Mantis tribe.
Oh yes,
the Mantises
the
have
goats.
a rich cultural history reaching back to long before the birth of Hallownest. The Mantises are a proud tribe, believing in the importance of proving one's physical strength. The Mantises are fiercely territorial, but will show respect to those who display great power. These Fight Club enthusiasts were led by 4 powerful Mantis lords, who I guess just kind of sat around waiting for outsiders to challenge them. The Mantis tribe had no interest in the Pale King's kingdom, but the two communities did come to a truce. In exchange for their independence from Hallownest, the Mantis tribe kept the beasts of Deepnest from invading Hallownest. Not sure why they didn't just go out the other exits from Deepnest, but whatever. I'm not an expert on border patrol. I don't work at ICE anymore. Let's move on to Deepnest. Now, many of the different tribes of Hallownest were kind enough to leave lore tablets behind, detailing pretty much everything we need to know about them. Unfortunately, the bugs of Deepnest didn't do that. We know that the spiders of Deepnest had a monarchy because why not? Those are always good, right? Also, within Deepnest are a separate group of spiders that immigrated to Deepnest at some point in the past. This group was known as the Weavers, and they established their own culture and history within Deepnest.
I saw like one weaver, I remember, and it ran away, and then I never saw it again.
Deepnest. They used looms of silk to weave stories, spells, and shields. One thing we know for sure about Deepnest is that they really didn't want anything to do with Hallownest. The struggles of Deepnest-Hallownest relations would become painfully clear as time goes on.
They may not have wanted anything to do with Hallownest, but honestly, like, who would want anything to do with them? Yeah, that's what I thought.
But for right now, it seems like the two remained fairly isolated from one another. Another section of Pre-Hallownest includes Green Path. Now, as far as we can
one more thing. Fuck deepness. Let's go. Okay, sorry.
Tell, the mushrooms, mantises, and spiders of Deepnest didn't worship any higher beings. There is this giant mushroom corpse in the fungal core, but I don't think this is a higher being. I mean, who the hell would want to worship a fat-ass mushroom? Fat-ass slugs? Now that's dope. The land we know as Green Path was created by the higher being known as Un. Un used her great mind to dream the vegetation of Green Path into the once barren caverns.
Really?
Un's followers, the Mosskin, were also born out of Un's dream, making her their creator. Green Path at its height was actually much larger than we see in game. At one point, Green Path stretched into both modern-day Queen's Garden and possibly Fog Canyon. Green Path citizens showed themselves to be a fairly developed society. They built a temple at the Lake of Un in order to worship her, and they even had their own line of defense, with Moss Knights showing proficiency in combat, using nails and shells as weapons. The Law of Un continued to remain in effect even after the Pale King arrived, but it seems like they allowed the king to establish a road through their lands, leading travelers to the heart of Hallownest. Hence the name Green Path. Yeah, Team Cherry really racked their brains when naming this area. Next, we have
really nice
bees.
theme though,
And
really
no
relaxing.
warn how these bees can turn into fucking drills, or how they can ignore all known laws of aviation. We do know how they reacted to the Pale King.
But they're so
These bugs
cute!
decided to seal their hive off from the rest of the world, with only patrol bees being able to enter and exit the hive. So yeah, the bees are pretty much pointless in this story. And finally we have the Moth tribe. In-game, the only Moth settlement is in the resting grounds, but the tribe might have also inhabited the Crystal Peak at one point. Now, as we all know, moths in real life are just complete assholes. As for the moths in Hollow Knight, well...
I am not gonna elaborate on this, but that was once upon a time I saved a moth's life in real life. It happened many years ago, but I will refuse to elaborate unless if asked. It's so stupid when I think about it, but I did. Moths aren't really assholes. They just like lamp.
It's a bit complicated. The Moth race is described as being a rather pacifist group, with few ever choosing to take up a weapon. During the Pale King's reign, the Moth race delved amongst dreams and the dead, displaying the importance of remembering those who have passed, as well as learning how to shape dreams themselves. Similar to the Mosskin, the Moth tribe was born from a higher being
Radiance.
known as the Radiance.
Oh.
The Radiance is described as being a light in which the Moth tribe basked, so she was basically a giant lamp to them. Another important aspect about the Radiance is her ties to dreams and a substance known as essence. Essence are the remains of wishes and dreams, and are represented in-game by these dream-catcher particle effects. Essence can take the form of whispering roots, as well as dream ghosts, both of which are memories taking root in the world. The Radiance appears to be a creature made of essence, but she isn't the only higher being to give off essence. Un has green particles, the Pale King has gray particles, and this sexy character named Grim gives off fiery red particles.
My boy!
However, the Radiance appears to be the main god when it comes to dreams, even if other gods also dabble in the dream realm.
Okay.
Getting back to the Moth tribe,
The more powerful
it's their interaction
being.
with the Pale King that we need to discuss.
Seer.
Basically, the Moths turned their backs on the Radiance completely, in order to worship the new light that had appeared, the Pale King's light. So yeah, Moths are assholes in this game too.
We all saw who that was. In any case, let's just go back here.
So yeah.
I'm just gonna say it. I don't like his fight. He's really fucking cool, but I really do not like his fight in Pantheon 5. Oh wait, that's kind of spoils where I'm at. Well, I am further than him, so hee.
Moths are assholes in this game too. With her tribe forsaking her, the Radiance became a forgotten memory, a remnant of the past.
Good.
And a thing that's definitely not going to come up again later in this video.
Exactly.
And so the Pale King's new kingdom was established, Hallownest. But there is one aspect of Hallownest that we need to discuss. Unfortunately, to better understand this, we're going to have to read some poetry. In Wilds Beyond, they speak your name with reverence and regret.
That's the beginning of the game. That is the beginning of the game. That is actually in my part 1, which you should watch if you haven't.
Tame our savage souls, yet you the challenge met. Under palest watch you taught, we changed. Base instincts were redeemed. A world you gave to bug and beast as they had never dreamed. This is from a poem titled Elegy for Hallownest, written by Motamon the Teacher. The poem appears at the beginning of every playthrough, and hints at what the Pale King and his kingdom offer.
Let's go! Let's go!
The land outside of Hallownest appears to be a wasteland, where bugs survive off of instinct, without the burden of mind. Hallownest somehow taught these bugs and tamed their savagery. Basically, the Pale King changed the instincts of his subjects, and granted them higher thought. To get a better picture of this, let's look at 2 different characters, Boone and Tuck.
How the fuck does one do that?
These adorable panda bug things give us a clear display of Hallownest's effect. While both appear to be the same species of bug, Boone is dumb as a sack of rocks, struggling to string together words, while Tuck speaks fairly clearly. The main difference between these 2 characters is that while Boone lives outside of Hallownest, Tuck lives beneath the city's capital. Basically, it appears as though Hallownest is a literal holy ground that raises the intelligence of those who dwell within. The Pale King established a path, starting from the kingdom's entrance in King's Pass, winding through Greenpath and the fungal wastes, and finally ending at the massive capital at Hallownest's heart. We now know the capital city as the City of Tears, but that was likely not its original name. The rain that falls down onto the city from the blue lake above didn't begin until after the kingdom collapsed. So unless the capital was originally named by some edgy literature student, the name City of Tears wouldn't have made much sense. The king's motivation for all this appears to have been his desire to be worshipped. The citizens of Hallownest believe that the Pale King created the world, and everything in it. Shrines to the king can be found scattered throughout the kingdom, and king's idols were created and distributed to followers of the king.
That is such a big fucking idol.
The Pale King often kept himself hidden from his subjects, possibly to hide his blemishes. I mean, if you look at the size of the real Pale King to his statue in the ancient basin, the man is clearly overcompensating. The Pale King's White Palace was also built underneath the city, separating him from his subjects even more so. At the same time, certain powers became shunned in Hallownest, though we don't know for sure if the Pale King had anything to do with this.
Okay.
Lifeblood is a blue liquidy substance that leaves those who drink it feeling refreshed. However, the use of lifeblood was seen as a taboo, and those who used it were demonized as heretics. The use of soul
I can't remember her name.
is also shunned. Soul is a sort of life force in Hollow Knight that animates the bodies of living creatures. But some characters are able to control the soul of others to conjure powerful spirits. But aside from a few exceptions, no citizens of Hallownest ever use this power. However, the Pale King didn't rule alone. There was another higher being in the mix. A being.
She is in P5 too. The Godseeker was... can't find her. We did. We found her. But the Godseeker could not. Don't spoil anything, guys. I don't know. Yet. It won't be long.
Known as the White Lady. The White Lady is a weird brute-like being that can be found in the modern-day Queen's Gardens. She is encased in a strange cocoon, and we know very little about her. With as much exposition we get for the Pale King, there is next to nothing on the White Lady. But one thing we do know is that she likes to breed. Like, a lot. The White Lady would often retreat to the Queen's Gardens, an area of land once controlled by the Mosskin. How exactly she walked around and actually went places is a lore question too deep for even my expertise. The White Lady is also known as a pale being, along with the Pale King. What exactly are pale beings? Well, we don't know for sure, but they seem to stand out even amongst higher beings.
Oh, wait, no, I'm not a higher being.
That's a little confusing,
I'm just pale.
So let's try using an example.
Blending in?
I'd say that regular higher beings are like a TP-Link Archer C7 AC1750 wireless dual-band gigabit router, while pale beings are like the Asus RT-AX88U AX6000 dual-band 8X gigabit Wi-Fi router.
Obviously.
Under the Pale King, Hallownest underwent a bit of an industrial revolution. He ordered the construction of the stagways, which were used to transport passengers.
Thank you for that.
The Forgotten Crossroads and the storerooms above the City of Tears were used to store goods that traveled along these stagways. The king also ordered the construction of the tramways, because literally no one is safe from the threat of automation. A tram was built between the Forgotten Crossroads and the resting grounds. A second
threat
tram was
of
built
automation.
from the kingdom's edge across the ancient basin over to Deepnest. And then a third tram was started in Deepnest and attempted to go further into Deepnest. Not sure how useful that would have been to the bugs of Hallownest, but whatever. The Pale King's a smart guy.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna question him. But
shown
anyway,
here
the Pale
being
King's
dead.
super smart plan to build a tram in Deepnest ended up getting a few of his tram workers killed. The bugs of Deepnest rejected the Pale King's attempt to build a tram in their territory, further cementing the poor relations shared between the two groups. Aside from convenient fast travel, regular pathways were also used to cart goods around the kingdom. From this was born probably one of the most important groups in Hallownest, and perhaps even all of fiction. An elusive guild of bugs, simply known as the
Myla?
took to maintaining the various signs scattered throughout Hallownest.
It's Myla,
From the
I
journal
think.
entry of one Mender bug, we can catch a glimpse into their ancient and unknowable minds.
Dear, dear diary, isn't life just the most beautiful thing? Fixing signs, mending posts, let them break, I say. I'm a better mender for all that repairing. I sometimes doubt there's a single bug in all of Hallownest happier than me.
Another example of the Pale King's
Are they fixing the signs that I'm breaking in the game? Are they doing that? Okay. Very cool.
expanding infrastructure is the Crystal Peak. This area is filled with crystals that grow rapidly along walls, ceilings, and even the shells of certain bugs. These crystals were considered valuable to the bugs.
Oh, that's not Myla.
Resulting in large-scale mining efforts.
I was about to be
We
so
don't
happy.
actually see the crystals used anywhere else in Hallownest, but they are said to contain a sort of energy. The
Yep.
crystals are also said to sing, if you listen very carefully.
Please. I can't.
In terms of military, Hallownest's first line of defense appeared to be a group simply known as the Five Great Knights.
Yep.
The members of this
They're made out of shit.
coalition were Ogrim, Hagamol, Zamir,
Dung Defender's name is Ogrim? Hegemol?
This esteemed coalition were Ogrim, Hagamol, Zamir, Drya, and Isma. For being so important, most of the information about these knights has been lost to time. Ogrim is the knight we know the most about, since he is one of the few knights still alive during the events of the game. Ogrim expressed a great amount of loyalty towards the king, and he maybe had something going on with Isma, but we really don't know.
Okay.
Hagamol was known for his sense of humor and his soft-spoken voice, but at the same time, he was also dummy thick. Mysterious Samir arrived in Hallownest from a serene land, bringing with her
He got killed in his sleep. Yeah.
a collection of delicate flowers.
Samir.
At some point, she also got into a relationship with a mantis, but not just any mantis.
The
a
Trail Lord's
daughter of one of the
daughter.
Mantis Lords. So
Wait,
yeah, it
what?
seems like
Wait,
these
wait.
great
It was the Mantis Lords? I thought it was... Wait, let me hear it again, sorry.
At some point, she also got into a relationship with a mantis, but not just any mantis. A daughter of one of the Mantis Lords.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, it seems like these great knights were slaying in more ways than one.
I was
All
too
we really
hasteful.
know about Drya is that she was fierce, caring, and wise. As for Isma, she was described as being kind. She also appears to be some sort of weird plant life form, but there's no information on where she's from or what her powers were. The Five Great Knights play an important role in the Champion's Call, the Knotted Grove, and the Battle of the Black Worm. We have no idea what these events were or how they affected Hallownest, but they sound cool nonetheless. During Hallownest's reign, there was another strange area that seemed to exist separate from the Pale King's rule. Carved out of the corpse of an ancient bug, an area called the Colosseum of Fools was constructed, and it was a destination for warriors from outside Hallownest. The sole purpose for fighting in the Colosseum appeared to be simply for glory, with a mysterious figure known as the Lord Fool overseeing the combat. We don't know when the Colosseum was constructed or if the Pale King was involved, but one of his servants, the Pale Lurker, became a champion in the Colosseum, perhaps indicating the Pale King's approval. And finally, there was the Royal Waterways.
I killed that guy.
The fecal excrement of the kingdom was washed out into the fungal wastes. This area saw the rise of a species of parasite-like creatures called the Flukes.
Ew.
The Flukes spawned from the Fluke Marm, a giant monster with cavities in which tinier Flukes live. There really isn't too much lore involved with the Flukes, but I do need to point out that the Fluke Marm is canonically a MILF. Like, that's not even debatable. The sky is blue, 2 + 2 = 4, and we all want to fuck this thing. And so this was the kingdom of Hallownest at its height. Hallownest was a vast kingdom connected by a network of stagways and tram stations. The bugs of Hallownest mourned their dead on the resting grounds, engaged in commerce using Geo, the de facto currency of the region, and a thriving capital located in the middle of the kingdom. The Pale King had succeeded in crafting a full-blown society, but we all know there are pitfalls to living in a society. As the suspiciously knowledgeable Hunter points out in his journal.
Ooh, that's the first time I see him like that. Yo, the Hunter. The guy who almost has 8 eyes. No. The guy who has 6 eyes, that's almost the same as 8. I can't believe I said that.
The Pale King had created a population of weak and pathetic creatures. The bugs of Hallownest did not hunt for their own food, and had become complacent with their comfort. This is even more obvious with the east wing of the capital. These greedy members of Hallownest's high society became complete cowards, obsessed with riches and plum from excess wealth. The bugs.
Apparently this one gives exactly 420 geo. I think that's what someone wrote in my comments.
Living in Hallownest Prime looked quite different than the instinctive simpletons they once were. Their savagery had been replaced with intelligence, and through that intellect, they gave the Pale King the devotion and service he desired. And while there were a few snags along the way, they were shining times for the king and his subjects. Resting at the threshold of Hallownest is a strange lore tablet, proclaiming Hallownest to be the last and only civilization. It calls Hallownest an eternal kingdom. This appears to have been the Pale King's goal, for Hallownest to stand against a wasted world as a final beacon for civilization. And that was the Pale King's ultimate folly.
Did you guys read that? Bear witness to the last and only civilization, the Eternal Kingdom. Is that an excuse to not bring out Silksong?
For civilization. And that was the Pale King's ultimate folly, to think that he could succeed where so many others had failed before. Long before the Pale Kings or the Barry Bensons of the world, the land of Hallownest was controlled by an ancient caste. Hints of Hallownest history are littered throughout the land, with the most notable examples being the soul totems and arcane eggs. One sect of these ancient bugs didn't worship a god like the Pale King or any lord, but instead a dark and mysterious substance known as the Void.
The Void.
This ancient caste once also tried to lay claim to the entire land of Hallownest, but they too failed. In his quest to conquer all of Hallownest, the Pale King had made an enemy long forgotten, an enemy that was
Radiance.
about to be remembered. I mentioned earlier that the Moth tribe entirely forgot about the Radiance in order to worship the Pale King, but that isn't quite true. Memories of her still lingered, and hushed whispers of faith kept the Radiance alive. At the summit of the Crystal Peak, a location known as Hallownest Crown, a strange collection of glyphs can be found. Joining these glyphs is a statue of the Radiance, presiding over the kingdom below. This old summit is the sole standing shrine left to the Radiance. This was built in order to keep the memory of the Radiance alive. The Radiance's light began to appear in the dreams of Hallownest citizens.
Yep.
This light manifested itself in an infection that ravaged the kingdom's tunnels.
Hate moths.
Would fall into a deep sleep and awaken with broken minds. Some of the lesser bugs tried to resist the Radiance's light, which only resulted in them being consumed by it even more so. Many infected bugs lost their wills and began attacking bugs.
This is the guy that explodes.
The infection also twisted the bodies of its hosts, causing them to bloat and occasionally develop orange cysts on their bodies. For many victims, they were reverted back to their basic instincts, carrying out the duties they once fulfilled in life, but now as mindless slaves. Those caught up in the infection were linked into the
Moss Prophet,
allowing her to control their bodies if needed. As the infection
disgusting.
spread across Hallownest, many groups looked to solutions to fight off the Radiance's.
It's actually funny because the Pale King made them smarter, whereas the Radiance made them dumber? Huh?
Light. The gates to the City of Tears were closed in an attempt to keep the infection from reaching the city. The stagways were also shut down at some point, and many of the stags eventually died out, but some took more proactive efforts against the infection. The scholars of the Soul Sanctum decided to harness the power of Soul in an attempt to fight the infection.
Okay.
This resulted in the deaths of hundreds of bugs, whose souls were
Only
sucked out
hundreds?
and injected into the bodies of the scholars. Their goal was to achieve some kind of pure focus, which would somehow protect them from plagues of the mind. The
Pretty cool.
scholars' leader, the Soul Master, was driven mad by the sheer
The one with the cat ears! There he is! He's right there!
power of Soul, and his entire sect failed to avoid infection. But hey, at least they took as many innocent people down with them as they could. The Mantis tribe, showing a stronger will than the common bug, were able to stave off the infection. However, one of the 4 Mantis Lords turned against his sisters. He and his followers took in the infection willingly, as it gave them more strength and courage. At some point during all this, the Traitor Lord and his followers were exiled from the Mantis village, eventually taking up residence in the Queen's Gardens. The Traitor Lord's daughter ended up dying at some point. This is the same Mantis that was in a relationship with Zamir, one of the 5 great
We brought
knights,
her a flower.
but the Mantises rejected their union because of Zamir's outsideness. As a gamer, this type of prejudice is all too familiar, and honestly, it makes me sick. With the 5 Great Knights completely useless to fight against the infection,
Look at him.
the Pale King devised his own scheme. A scheme involving a strange substance known as Void. As I mentioned earlier, the Pale King's White Palace was built in an area called the Ancient Basin, but his castle wasn't the only noteworthy thing down there. At the bottom of the Ancient Basin was the entrance to a pit known as the Abyss. Within the Abyss was a lake composed of void. The Pale King realized that this void could be given form, as evidenced by an imprint of such deep within the Abyss, possibly left there by the ancient civilization that predated Hallownest. The Pale King devised a workshop in his palace, where he placed void in armor shells imbued with his soul, creating servants known as King's Molds and Wing Molds.
Vessels. He's creating
Were
vessels.
somehow imprinted with the desire of the Pale King, so that they would.
Is that really why the Hollow Knight was imprisoned? Was that to keep the infection at bay? And when we killed the Dreamer or whatever it was, I can't remember who it was that would be killed, and then the infection came out and got the crossroads.
Servant.
That's so sad!
It isn't clear when the Pale King started making these creatures. There is evidence to imply that even common bugs were
No, don't remind me. Don't remind me of the nailsmith.
aware of King's Molds. But the point is, the Pale King turned to the Void in order to create another creature, one that he believed could contain the Radiance and her infection. He tried to create a pure vessel. The Radiance's infection needs its host to have a will and a mind in order to enslave it. A pure vessel would be a creature made of void, designed to lack those features. The Pale King believed that by harnessing the void inside a pure vessel, he would be able to stop the infection and keep Hallownest lasting eternal. But his method for creating this so-called pure vessel was incredibly cruel. This is where the White Lady and her King Kong-sized libido come into play. These 2 higher beings engaged in a union of some kind, resulting in the creation of several eggs that were dropped down into the abyss. There, the void seeped into these eggs, corrupting the offspring of the Pale King and the White Lady. This act resulted in the creation of the vessels. The vessels are not technically considered to be alive. They are shells created from the Pale King and White Lady that have been filled with the void. Within each vessel is a shade, a completely void being hidden behind the face of the vessel. Vessels are also non-gendered, I guess because they're dead or something. I'm not sure if that's how that works, but whatever. I'm not an expert on these kinds of things. I don't work at ICE anymore. Thousands of vessels were created during this process, but only one was chosen as the pure vessel. This particular vessel, chosen by the Pale King, was deemed the Hollow Knight, and was taken away to the White Palace. But I want to take a bit of a closer look at this part of the story. There are a number of questions and theories surrounding this moment that I really want to dig into.
My brother!
The big question surrounding this moment is, why was the Hollow Knight chosen over any other vessel?
No, don't leave!
One common theory is that the Pale King took these vessels back to the White Palace and evaluated them using his giant collection of buzzsaws. This theory is probably the least likely explanation. It kinda exists just to explain the buzzsaws, which is quite the mystery, I'll admit, but doesn't really mesh with the
Path of Pain is goated.
Vessels very well. How does being good at Super Meat Boy prove that you are a worthy vessel? And while thinking about logistics in a game about magic bugs is never a good idea, how exactly did the Pale King transfer these thousands of vessels to his palace without characters like the Dung Defender finding out?
Wait, Ogrim is just laying there? I never found him again, so there were others. I don't understand, because if you defeat him, he farts, and then he falls all the way in the back. What? So, I've never seen that. I'm pretty sure I've ran through this place multiple times, even after defeating the White Defender.
So this means that the Pale King probably made his decision without taking any of the vessels out of the Abyss. So how did the Pale King make his evaluation? I think the best explanation comes from a theory I originally heard from a user named Golden Flower Fan. Basically, the vessels were hatched down at the bottom of the Abyss, and the first one to make it to the top was chosen by the Pale King. In a memory of this event, we see vessels falling from above back down into the pit of the Abyss.
I remember.
Perhaps these vessels weren't being cast down into the Abyss, but fell while trying to escape out of it.
Is that because they only worked on instinct, or what? Well, I guess I'll get the answer, right? But still.
The lore tablet outside the Abyss appears to support this theory. It reads, "Our pure vessel has ascended. Beyond lies only the refuse and regret of its creation. We shall enter that place no longer." This tablet was likely written right after the Hollow Knight was chosen, considering that is when the entrance to the Abyss was sealed off. The tablet proclaims that the pure vessel has ascended,
No, not
or in
again.
other words, climbed out
Don't
of the
leave.
Abyss. And while cut content should never be considered canon, I would just like to point out that an earlier version of this tablet, found in the game's code, was even more explicit about this. It read, "From below, our pure vessel has ascended." But how does making it to the top of the Abyss first prove that the Hollow Knight is somehow a perfectly hollow vessel?
I'll get the answer now.
Well, I think this whole concept might just be a misconception.
Oh.
What if the Hollow Knight wasn't any different from the other vessels? All the vessels were made in the exact same way after all. The idea that the Hollow Knight was somehow more hollow than the other vessels comes from the fact that there were so many vessels created in the first place. If they only needed one, then why create so goddamn many? I mean, this is like Octomom on steroids. Well, these are bugs we're talking about, so it would make sense that multiple offspring would come from one egg.
Hardest boss in the game.
And it might have been a precaution to produce multiple vessels, in hopes that at least one would be able to successfully escape the Abyss. Now another explanation could be that the Pale King just yeeted other vessels that made it to the top first, after determining that they weren't hollow, which would better explain why so many were created. Ultimately, the exact details aren't super important, but I do find it interesting how many different interpretations can be pulled from this part of the lore. After the Hollow Knight was chosen, the Pale King sealed the doorway to the Abyss, leaving the discarded vessels to rot away in darkness. These actions were not taken lightly by the Pale King or the White Lady. Both participants expressed shame in what they did, but saw no other option to save the kingdom. But the vessels weren't the only poor saps sealed away in the Abyss.
I really like this mod that lets him look at it from a broader FOV perspective. It's really cool. I really like that, because it makes us being able to see more as well, which is really nice.
Also a lighthouse that was built on top of a naturally formed spire, its light shining down on an ocean of abyss below. Inside was one of the Pale King's royal retainers, who was left in charge of keeping the lighthouse turned on. So this brave soul was willingly sealed in a dark and dangerous tomb for the rest of his life, just so he could not pull a lever. Well, at least he was living with purpose. With the Abyss sealed and the Hollow Knight chosen, the Pale King's plan was beginning to come together. The Hollow Knight was raised and trained to prime form,
So badass.
causing it to grow several times its original size.
Yep.
We don't know exactly why this happened, but
He's
I guess
just
the Hollow
goated.
Knight is just a grower and not a shower. We know that the Hollow Knight was trained to use a
There he is.
but
My
why
boy.
was this even necessary? One possible explanation is that the Hollow Knight needed to protect itself in case an intruder tried to kill it. You know, like the player. Or perhaps this was important in the process of containing the Radiance. Unfortunately, the details of that are never fully explained. The Hollow Knight might have somehow focused the Radiance inside itself, but Team Cherry gives us no explanation of how that might have worked. But that still wasn't enough for the Pale King. Additional seals were needed in order to protect the Hollow Knight's physical body while the Radiance was trapped inside of it. To achieve
The
this,
Dreamers.
the King sought the help of 3 particular bugs, who would later be known as the Dreamer.
I think this is gonna be the end of part 1 of this reaction. I have recorded for 46 minutes. Of course, it's not gonna be 46 minutes. It's gonna be a bit less, but I feel like this is way more than I should. I will be back. I will be back with this video, but it's not the next video. So, but I mean, be on your toes. I think this is gonna be part 1 of 2. It is very interesting. I like it so far, and I feel like it's only gonna be better throughout these whole chapters. But it's really interesting. Let me know in the comments if this is gonna spoil anything from P5. I know Absolute Radiance is a thing, just because people have commented it on some videos. So yes, thank you all so very much for watching. The friendliest of reminders to leave a like and subscribe to stay tuned for more. It helps me a ton, so thank you in advance. And until next time. And 3, 2, 1 fades away.